Hi there everyone and welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to be talking about my 2025 priority TBR and my 2025 goals. I thought that this would be a fitting time to go ahead and get back onto YouTube. I feel like I just had so much going on in 2024. Frankly, it was exhausting and I am just so excited to be back and be able to prioritize content and YouTube. So please forgive me for my prolonged absence, but we are getting back into it and it is one of my goals for the year to be consistent, but that's a sneak peek. So let's start with my 2025 priority TBR. And I already know that everybody is going to say, oh, the 25 books that I want to read in 2025. But you know what? That is like a fifth of my reading. And frankly, that's just unrealistic for me to even want to put those on my TBR. I think I put 24 in 2024 last year and I maybe read 5 of them. So I figured that we could just do 12 priority books that I want to get to and just make sure that I read at least one every single month. So I have all 12 of them right here. Let's get into it. So first, I have 2 romance books that I really want to get to this year. The first one being Forget Me Not by Julie Soto. I read Not Another Love Song in 2024 and absolutely loved it. I went absolutely feral for it. It was so freaking good. So I want to make sure to get to her backlist and everything that she's written prior to that book. And then her new releases, I will definitely be consuming immediately once they come out this year. And obviously I'm not going to say a ton about these books because I'm not fully sure what they're about because I haven't read them yet, obviously. But I believe that this one is a second chance romance between a wedding planner and a florist. And I know that in Not Another Love Song we got a glimpse at those characters, so I am very excited to see kind of what the lore is there. Next up, and I have been putting this one off for so long because it is such a chunkster for a romance book, but this is an iconic author that everybody loves, and that is none other than Mariana Zapata, and All Roads Lead Here. First off, I love this edition so much. I really don't like the cartoon characters that they have put onto the, I guess, traditionally published books now, but I love this so much. And I have no idea what it's about, but I know so many of the girlies say that Rhodes is one of their like all-time book boyfriends. So I am very hopeful. I want to see what all of the slow burn is about. And I think I'm going to try to read this one during the fall because it kind of gives fall vibes from the cover. And I think it takes place in the mountains. Don't hold me to that. But I have extremely high expectations for this author in this book. One book that I had put onto my 24 and 2024 TBR that I just didn't get to at all, but I really want to prioritize because I think that I'm going to love it in this series. And I've gotten really into cozy mysteries this year, and this one is more historical and everybody loves it. So I'm going to try A Curious Beginning by Deanna Raybourn. This is the first book in the Veronica Speedwell series, and I have such high hopes for it. The slow burn romance in here as well, but then also just following them as they go on their different adventures through. I think there's 7 or 9 books out. I'm not sure, and I know that it's not over yet. I really don't want to start new series that don't have an end. Like, I don't want to start any more incompleted series because I just want to read them. I want to get better at reading series all the way through so that I can experience it and really enjoy it and not forget about everything. But I am going to make an exception for this one because I think it's going to be great and take me forever to get through the books that are already available. Next up, I didn't read too much literary fiction in 2024, but I want to read a few more in 2025, especially from authors that I know that I love. So the first one I'm going to be picking up is Beartown by Frederick Bachman. I have heard nothing but incredible and shattering things about this novel. I've heard people just bawl their eyes out, which is so crazy from the outside. I felt the same way when people talked about A Man Called Ova, and I cried like one of my family members had died. Like, it was like a funeral had just been announced. I was crushed by that book, but in the best way possible. So I am really excited to get into more of his writing and understand what this book is all about. I know it focuses on, I think, a high school hockey team, but other than that, I have no concept of what this is, but I know it is a completed trilogy, so I am, again, just really looking forward to this one. Next up, and this gets into my final genre, which is definitely fantasy. I have so many unread fantasy books on my shelf, and I want to prioritize them basically all of 2025 to get through what I can. But this one I've heard is more of a literary fiction with a tad bit of magical realism. And that book is none other than The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue by V.E. Schwab. People say that this is going to be a classic at some point, and I have just heard devastating things about it. I love this edition as well. I believe this is the special like 10th anniversary edition, and I think it's so pretty. And I think it even has illustrations. Oh, and just like really stuff. Ooh, I don't think I've actually taken the Dutch jacket off of this book, but underneath is just like, it looks like a Jane Austen, one of those Penguin classic books. And so the end pages too are really pretty. That is so cool. So I am really looking forward to this book. I think it's going to be so good, and I'm just hopeful for it. I do know that the premise of this book is that a girl basically trades her mortality to be able to live and do as she pleases, but nobody remembers her until someday somebody finally does, and she's not sure why, and I think we're just going to follow them as we figure that out. Fingers crossed, it's a good one. Next up, because apparently I just want to cry all of 2025, I'm going to be picking up The Poppy War by R.F. Kuang. I read 2 of her books this year. I read Yellowface and Babel, and I'm just so stunned by her intelligence and her poise. I think it's so incredible what she's able to do in her books, and I have no doubt that the Poppy War trilogy will be of the same caliber. I have no idea what this series follows. I believe it's a girl who is going into a war academy. I could be completely wrong about that though. I'm assuming there's going to be some type of war that occurs, and she definitely has themes of injustice in society, and I'm pretty sure we're going to follow a similar vein, but I'm looking forward to it nonetheless. Next up is a YA pick, and I am really excited to get into Legendborn by Tracy Deonn. The 3rd book comes out in 2025, so I am going to be able to read this entire trilogy because I've heard that the next book after this, which I believe is Bloodmarked, leaves off on the craziest cliffhanger, and I just need to have the 3rd book in my hand so I can just go straight into it and keep that momentum going. In this story, I think we watch our main female character come into her powers. She attends an academy where she's able to harness those magical abilities. I believe it's like dark academia as well, woman of color, and I'm not really sure what else from there. I know that I've heard people who love Ninth House will love this, and I did love Ninth House. So guess what? I'm excited for it. One of my big goals in 2025 is going to be getting through the Cosmere and reading Brandon Sanderson. I am incredibly intimidated by it due to the sheer size of the standalone books, but then also how many books there are to catch up on. But I'm not going to let that deter me any longer. I'm going to commit to it and get after it. And so I'm going to be starting that journey with Mistborn. This is the first in the Mistborn series. It is era 1. I know there is a second era, but this is the first book, and I believe where a lot of people recommend you start with the Cosmere. And so I am already intimidated by it. I believe this one alone is a little over 500 pages, and it's incredibly floppy, but there are so many words on the pages. I think it's going to take me forever to get through this. I also really want to listen to the audiobooks because when I talk about the characters, I want to make sure that I'm pronouncing them correctly, because some of the language and the names and what the magic system is, I just want to make sure that I'm pronouncing it correctly. So I'm definitely going to be spending a lot of my Libro FM credits on the Cosmere this year. One book that was incredibly popular last year that I never ended up getting around to was The Crimson Moth, or Heartless Hunter. I really couldn't figure out what the name was in the US, but this is obviously a Fairloot edition of the book, and it is extremely beautiful. But this is The Crimson Moth, but it's also called The Heartless Hunter, and this is a YA fantasy book where it is witch and witch hunter romance, and the first book leaves off on a cliffhanger. I can probably guess it based on what I've seen in all the other fantasy books that I've read. But the second book, The Rebel Witch, comes out in 2025, so I want to be able, again, to make sure that I can go straight into that one if I end up enjoying this one. I've seen some creators say that it's not worth the hype, and so I'm wondering if I'll feel similarly or if I'll enjoy it, but regardless, I want to make sure to get to it. Next up, another series that I have been very intimidated by, and just this author in general because he is high fantasy. That is The Shadow of the Gods by John Gwynne. The third book recently came out, so now it is a completed trilogy. So again, can fly through the series and binge that. But I think this is going to be such a fun ride. I think it's going to take me a while to get through those 3 books, but I think it's going to be worth every second of it. Another YA fantasy recommendation that I have heard a fair amount about. I really thought that it was only going to be a duology, but I think it's come out that it's going to be more than that, which is unfortunate because I really didn't want to start in completed series, but I really do want to get to The Hurricane Wars by Thea Gunzon. I'm not sure if I'm saying that correctly, and I do apologize, but I got this Fairy Loot edition, and it is just so pretty. I am just obsessed with this. No words, no notes. I think this is so stunning. But I've heard people really struggle with the world building and what the actual plot is of this book. But I've also heard that it's incredibly underhyped. So I'm gonna make my own decision for myself. And lastly, another book that really popped off in 2024 that I hadn't gotten to, again, because it's so big, and the ending, everybody says, is insane. And I wanted to make sure that the second book was there so that I could just jump straight into that one. And that is The Will of the Many by James Islington. This is the first edition of it. I know that a second edition and like new cover came out for it, but I wasn't a huge fan of that one. So I'm really excited that I was able to get my hands on this one. But I believe this is a similar, like our main male character is at a school and it's like political. I actually have no idea, so I'm not even gonna try. But I do know that the end is quite the cliffhanger that I am excited for, but I do want to make sure that I have book 2 out so that I can just jump straight into it. And those are the 12 books that I really want to prioritize in 2025. I have already kind of started mapping out my TBRs for each month to make sure that I have at least one of these on each of my TBRs so that I can really get into it. But I am so excited for all of them. If you've read any of them, please let me know what your thoughts were and where I should start. So if you only wanted to hear about the books that I was going to be reading in 2025 and prioritizing, that's basically that. I am now going to be talking about my goals for 2025 because I feel like you're going to see some of them come to fruition in my videos. So that is what I'm going to be talking about now. First, I'll talk about my bookish goals and then my personal goals. So my first bookish goal is that I want to read 100 books. I feel like that is my standard for just each year. I feel like that's a good number for me. It's achievable, but it's still a bit difficult. So I think I'm going to end the year around 130, but I really want to read bigger fantasy books this year. So that allows me the space and just a little bit more flexibility instead of trying to increase that number, just kind of keeping it consistent with 100 each year. Next, I really want to buy less books. I have recently seen Carter Sullivan talking about how she wants her library to be just books that she's absolutely loved and read, and I really want to get my library to a similar place. I have so many unread books, so unless I'm going to be immediately picking a book up, I don't really need to have it. And I'd also really like to start reading on Kindle Unlimited through the Libby app so that I can decide first if the book is worth buying. We'll see how that goes, but I did cancel my Fairy Loot and Illumicrate subscription so that I could meet this goal a little bit easier. So I do feel pretty good about that. Next up, I'd like to read 12 series. I realize that I have a lot of series on my shelves and I tend to shy away from them because I feel as though I'm in the middle of so many series all the time that I don't want to pick up another one. But the series on my shelves typically are ones that are completed, so I really want to be able to just start reading those and knocking those out. And you also saw that in my Priority TBR, quite a few are series. So that is going to be a goal for me, is to not be intimidated by series, but to start reading them and then read them back to back so that I don't forget what has happened and just kind of put off the last book. Like the Magnolia Park series is a perfect example because I read the first 4 books so quickly, like within 2 months, and then the last book came out and I just haven't picked it up. Like I won't touch it because I just don't want it to end and not have more content to consume from that world. Next up, I do have a book of the month subscription, so I want to read one book from them every month because they have their 2025 challenges and I never meet them because I never end up reading all of the books through them. So I really want to prioritize getting through that backlist a bit too. So fingers crossed I'm able to do that because they also have a prize if you do it, and I'm a sucker for it. And then lastly is just being consistent with my posting on YouTube and on TikTok if that doesn't go away. But I just want to do better at content and really prioritize it because I think it's a ton of fun and I enjoy doing it, so it should be a priority. So those are my 5 overarching bookish goals. Now let's talk about some of my personal goals. You'll see that a couple of them do overlap. Like my first goal for the year personally is just to read 100 books. I feel like for my mental health and what I enjoy doing, that is just such a big goal for me and such a big part of who I am. So I want to be able to prioritize that, and then I can check 2 goals off at the end of the year when I do hit that number. I had a similar goal this year of working out 4 times per week on average. I just feel like physical fitness is such an important part of the human experience, and I have a desk job, so I don't walk around a ton or get as much movement in as I should. So prioritizing my physical health I think is really important as well, no matter what that exercise is. As long as I'm doing it, I can be content with that. So in a similar vein, I want to just generally prioritize health, and I know people are going to be like, these are just very broad goals, they're not super measurable, but in my monthly goal setting, I try to make that a bit more measurable. So overarching for the year, prioritizing health looks like exercising. I'd really like to prioritize massages because I love them and I am a very tense person, so it feels really good to just work out all the knots. I got my first facial in 2024 and loved it, so I'd really like to do that more if possible. And also I'd really like to start meditating. I, again, am a pretty tense person, pretty high strung, so being able to find more moments of peace and just not letting my mind race all the time, I think would be a really, really good practice for me. And lastly, if I can man up enough to start therapy, I think that would be so fantastic because I am a firm believer that a lot of people need it, and I am no exception to that. I know that there are definitely things that I can work on, and I would really like to work on them right now. I feel like it's kind of the prime time too, kind of your late 20s, and just really getting to a good place so that you can just keep thriving from here. Additionally, I want to try more hobbies because in the past I have been doing grad school or certifications and I haven't had a lot of time to explore hobbies outside of reading. And I really want to get better at doing hobbies with my hands because like reading is mind stimulating, but I haven't found one where I can really use my hands a ton. And so I am going to be baking and cooking more. I'm really excited and so many Pinterest recipes to try. I really want to try coloring because I think that one pairs extremely well with audiobooks. So I want to try that one a bit more. And different forms of exercise. I typically ride my Peloton and do some strength workouts, but I'd really like to try out yoga and Pilates, and I'd like to get back into running. So those are things too that I really want to try and prioritize and just make an effort to do more of. I am a very comfortable routines person, so getting outside of my comfort zone and what I typically do in a day, I think would be, again, just really, really helpful for me. And the last one for the personal goal, and again, an overlap from my bookish goal, is to prioritize and focus on content creation. I really enjoy it, like I said, and nothing really changes from the bookish goal, but I think that is another good thing and something that will be, I think, a large part of my year. So having that as a goal for me personally too, I think will help in my prioritization of it. And those are all my goals for the year. I hope that's helpful. I really am making this video to hold myself accountable, but I hope that you all will share maybe what are some of your top priority books to get to in 2025 and any goals that you have for yourself. I'm a big goals person. I'm very goal oriented. I have to have something to work towards, even if it is just the goal is to chill out. I have to meet it. Like, I'm very competitive. I need to just one, be comfortable with not having goals, but also if they're productive, then I think we can make an exception. But yes, hopefully you all enjoyed this video. I'm really excited for the new year and for all of the content that I'm going to be creating on YouTube again. So I am really excited to interact with you all more as well. Feel free to follow along with the journey and also let me know what books you're prioritizing in 2025 and any goals that you have. And I will see you all in the next one. Bye.